What's going on, guys? I'm back and it's time for another ESL Pro League preview, predictions and review of everything that's been going on. But before that, you might realize I'm in a little bit of a different setup. Yes, there's been no streams, there's been nothing going on because I'm back. I'm back in Kiev. It was a 15+ hour journey. I stopped by in the west of Ukraine, went through Slovakian border, met some family, caught up with people, and then drove like 10 hours to Kiev. It's a bit weird being here. It's a bit strange. It was like a very emotional moment coming back to my apartment. I needed to go fix a lot of things, you know, and make sure the apartment was in a better standard. But it's still standing. Everything's good. In general, I don't feel unsafe here. People are trying to go about their normal lives. You wait for the sirens and stuff to go off. But I got to keep producing this content. I couldn't stop. So I set things back up. I'm testing and using the best audio quality and stuff as I can possible. But hold up a minute. Now, welcome, Shidan. Little dance, little dance, little dance. Yes, poor little Shidan with us who was barking in the background there. Got a little adventure as well. You ready to move? First little video appearance. So, looking back at my Group C picks and who qualified, I did make another failure, but I was right on what I said in the video. If you were following my advice, if you were following my knowledge, and maybe predicting over on GGBet, again, shout out GGBet, use code BANKS, get yourself a bonus with that one. Because if you follow my predictions, you're probably doing very well right now. Now, I said it would be FaZe, Vitality, Nip, and OG, but I expected OG to up. There you go. I'm remembering not to swear. I even have the swear button there. Because I wasn't a fan of, obviously, Nexa not being on the roster. They can't help it right now. Nika, I don't really rate him as a player, let alone as having to be an IGL. But I thought it'd be maybe a Greyhound that would go through, and instead it was Pain. Now, pretty good, right? I'll say for Pain. They beat Rooster 2-0, beat OG 2-1, beat Greyhound 2-1. Zebi, who I put as a shining star, did stand out, but it was Skulls that came up huge. So, shout out to Pain. You made it through the playoffs. Great ratings from the team in general. This was a huge performance and a step in the right direction for him. When I look down my shining stars from last time as well, Twist ended with a 1.12 rating, Spinks 1.14, Flames 1.02. It's understandable though, but OG's not doing so good. Hedrick still not quite hitting the mark, 104. Zevi 1.09. Liaz, oh, poor Liaz, man. I love this player and I think he can be used better, but only 0.96. And Dumal 1.12 on 00 Nation. But let's get ourselves into the final group of ESL Pro League 17. It's Group D. Now, as always, guys, I'll be putting things into top, medium, and below tier. And for the top tier, there's, again, only two teams in this, and it's pretty obvious ones. Liquid, the number 3 ranked team in the world. That is where I'll be starting things off with here. They last played at Katowice. It is in the same group as NAVI, who they did end up losing to at Katowice, but they didn't lose overall in the playoff stage versus them. They went up against G2, and the thing I'll say about that G2 game, you might look at the scoreline and think, yeah, they put up a good fight, but it was still a 2-0, and there was never at a point where I felt like Liquid could have taken the map. I felt like G2 were always in control. Now, they did use Blast groups as a warm-up. They said to us that, oh, yes, this is more like as a practice for the year, and they want to start with this 7 map pool because they can play Vertigo. They added Nuke in there. But guess what? They haven't played Vertigo this year, so maybe they want to just throw it in every now and again. Maybe they don't feel comfortable with the current lineup and what they're doing with this on it. But I don't think they can claim 7 maps. Nuke's still not a great map for them, but they're learning from it. They can throw it in there. So they're changing things up. Now, Elige, this player you can always rely on for Liquid. He can have some up and down games. He can get tilted. We see it on the cameras. But I think overall, I'm pretty happy with him. The rise of OC, though, is what I have to talk about here. OC. Now, in Liquid, in their system, they never had a heavy focus on the AWPers, you know, unless you go back to the simple times, maybe. But he doesn't need to be super explosive. He just needs to be able to hold his own and also clutch out some of these rounds. And I feel like he is getting smarter. His stats may not be the highest you see of AWPers and everything you guys want to see at home in terms of the craziness. But I feel like this is an AWPer who is working in the system. I feel like this is a player who's always calm, he's always cool, and he's no longer a liability. In the past, he was a liability, and we questioned whether he would last much longer when it comes to being on Liquid. But right now, I'm happy. Right now, things are looking good. Other player I want to touch on, though, is Yakinda. Now, Yakinda, his role doesn't make his stats look so consistent, so you can only read so much when you look at that. You have to look at his gameplay, game style. At the beginning of Liquid, though, he was dominating. It was a whole change of pace, change of style. His relationship he has with Elise, it was also positive. Things slowed down on some of these tougher events, but I also know at Katowice he wasn't feeling too well. He's a bit ill when we were speaking to him before. So I'm still willing to say that Yakinda can be the difference maker in here. And I will say that Liquid should just be going through. This should be an easy group for them. Only Na'Vi can be a real challenge to them. And obviously they want some revenge against Na'Vi. So we have to wait and see how that will go for them overall. Interesting though, for my shining star, I'm bringing in nasty ass Naf. Now Naf, this guy, he at one point in an interview said to me, I'm more the supportive player on this team. He's so good. He's so damn consistent. Obviously, we meme him about the sloth on the cameras and stuff, and he doesn't show too much. He's just playing his game, getting on with it, having fun. Naf is an absolute beast. Naf doesn't have bad games for Liquid right now, and in wins or losses, you can rely on him to do more than his job. Naf is a smart player. He's an exciting player. If you checked out the Maui Snake podcast that he does with some of the interviews he had, I think it was Scrawny and Naf on at the same time, but Naf gave some great insight, and I feel like Naf right now, he is the star for Liquid. He is the one that's going to be putting up the numbers. So let's see how they do. Opening game against Rare Atom shouldn't be hard for them at all. The Chinese team, maybe they drop a map because it's like early game, but really just should be a 2-0. Liquid all the way. Liquid going through. Maybe first in the group, potentially second. We'll come on to that in a little bit. Now the next team in the group is NAVI, back in the high tier as well as expected. Look behind me. NAVI Nation everywhere. NAVI are a consistent, dominant team, always making playoffs, always making their way forward. They last played at Katowice. They lost out to Heroic, which is an acceptable loss considering how good Heroic are. We got to look at MPL though. MPL, the young player coming through. He has had a lot more time with the team, and people were saying, "Oh, he doesn't sit in good positions. I don't agree with these positions." I spoke to Blade and Simple on interviews at Blast about what is going on with this team. With Katowice, they changed the seating arrangement to the player who was sat next to. He was no longer next to Simple. He's moved across the side. I spoke to MPL, and he said there's now been more position changes. So they've had time. They've been boot camping. This is still a Na'Vi we believe in, but Blade making these micro adjustments. Remember, guys, back home, when Bit came into the team, he started with 2 maps, got eased his way into it. MPL started for 1 event with 2 maps. They used it at Blast World Finals. And then he just had to take all the maps because SDY went out and they wanted a consistent 5 team. So MPL has a lot to do. And his numbers do not look great. And his stats do not look amazing. But right now, Na'Vi experimenting. They're still making playoffs, still making deep runs. And I still expect them to do well. Now, you got to remember, the core of this team, they won everything. They won the major. They won your Colognes. They won the biggest events going around. They were so dominant during their era. Then Electronic has to take over the IGL role, which personally, I wouldn't say is the problem there. If you look at Electronic, you look at his performance, it's still very good. And it's not a huge drop-off. But if we're looking at these events, it's like, he's not the player I want to see as an IGL. I still want to see him in a great position. But they want to run with this. Then also, we've got to touch on the fact that they are still getting to playoffs. But they went from winning everything to just getting to playoffs. That hurts the team, They want the best from themselves. They want the best from others around them. So we are waiting to find out what this Na'Vi will deliver. But in an EPL group stage, they should just be dominant. They should be going through, I think, first in the group. I think they should beat Liquid. But we'll have to see how both teams start off their performances and how they're running. The tough thing for Na'Vi is they go up against Forze, a CIS matchup in the opening game. It's always a fun clash. But they should win it still, and there should be extra motivation there. And also, I know people don't want me to touch on it so much, but they're still affected by the war. These guys have been separated from their family, separated from their home. Think of this, I'm only in Kiev because I have a British passport, right? I can come here without having a problem. If they go back, they have problems where they can't go back in. It's tough, and yes, it can be used as an excuse to a degree, but look how well they're playing, all these things going on, all this stuff, like the mental coaches with them at every single event, trying to help out as best as possible. Should be easy to them in the group, so shining star, probably no real doubts from any of you on who I'm going to pick here. It's simple. My boy, best player in the world. People are going to say, oh, but his stats right now, they're not good. Oh, he's not been as high up as he was. He's a player who needs the system around him to give him a chance to go out and do what he wants to do. Right now, he has to help a lot, has to micromanage a lot. There's so much change in the team going around him. And yeah, he's still the star player, but Counter-Strike is very hard hitting. And when you don't have the full confidence, in your team that you're covered, then you can't go for the same peaks and pokes he was going for. If they can get things more in order, more comfortable, then I want to see him be able to pop off. But in a group stage like this, he should be just smashing the hell out of every single one of them. Now, if he doesn't here at EPL, I will start to say maybe we do get worried, because other players are having these problems even with roster changes going on. But there's a hell of a lot more changing around the NAVI camp and personally outside of the game as well. But that's it for our high tier. Let's move on to the mids. Now, the mid tiers, and I'm starting with the team that is ranked 20th in the world, because I think they're going to be going through as well. It is Ents. Now, Ents, they took away Valde, brought in Nerds, and Snappy was saying, okay, another Israeli player. He's been keeping an eye on these guys. He's been hearing a lot about these guys. I love Snappy for that, by the way, looking down to some of these lower players. He was on Endpoint. Again, Endpoint raising up, UK boys, bringing up talent. Now, the great thing is here, this is going to be the first event ever for Nerds. It's going to be a big challenge for him. But he's looking good. This is a bright player with potential to be a star, but it has to see if that's going to be harnessed. It's going to have to see if that's being used. Look at Spinks. Ever since Ents lost Spinks, another Israeli player, they've struggled. They've not found their form. They've not looked good. Some Pius, though, some Pius still delivering in a big way. Even when they speak about the communication issues, you know, and him switching over to English, he's still impressed. He still showed me great results, great numbers. I'm not worried about that. Diha even elevating himself. Polish guy, bringing it through. Another anime enjoyer, my man. Diha looked really good. And I will say, overall, Ents have a solid foundation. Snappy's way of having this team put together is great. They've also had a month now with Nerds and a month of practice coming into EPL, coming to his first Tier 1 event. Yes, we can say that a Tier 1 event for him is going to be tough. It's such a jump up for sure. Look how many teams we see get a qualifying spot for a big event and kind of fail at the first hurdle. But overall, I'm excited about Nerds. I think Ents is a great system for a new young player to go into, and someone like Snappy can completely make him feel comfortable and get to the position where he can dominate. But it's still a lot of unanswered questions. So I'm a bit of a risk on my pick here, going straight in and saying, yeah, they're the third team to go through. But my shining star, because I don't think too much is going to have changed within Ents. I'm not going to go for some Pius. It's an easy one. I'm going to go for Nerds. I'm going to go for a bold pick. Just look at his numbers. Look at his stats in 2023. This guy has been dominating everyone once again. I love it. Now, to do it against some of the very best, to do it on this level, not going to be easy. But I trust in this Ents system. And I will say, right, I put a lot of my thoughts on this, on the old Entses and how things worked with Spinks, and I don't expect them to come in straight away looking the same, but they are making changes they need to be at the top again. And it's been a long time since we've seen them make good playoff runs and look like a team that can really compete. They didn't even do well in Malta, you know. Okay, they had the stand-in from the Ents Academy player, but it wasn't really a performance I expected from such high caliber players. Now, this is where I want to see them shine. And in a group stage like this, a little bit less pressure, you know, studio environment. Let's see what they can do. Let's see if they can go all the way. But it's quite a tough one. And it's a risky one from me, considering I'm on 10 out of 12 correct predictions on who have made it to the playoffs. But I believe in my big brain, and I believe in Snappy and the way. He actually has the big brain, not me. Next, I'm coming on to Team Spirit, who also sit in the middle of the tier list for me. Now, when it comes to Spirit, I'm going to start by the conversation, an interview I did back at Katowice with their mental coach. Great guy, first of all, and very smart guy. He was talking me through the way they did things for his players and how they do that crazy shouting. You've probably heard it on the streams. And it's not anything aggressive or against the enemies. It's about unleashing the dragon inside these players, getting them to feel at their very best and to push it all out. Now, you cannot deny this team from the past two majors and what they've been able to do. And you cannot deny how, no matter what players they've got, when they've lost good players, like Dexter, for example, they've still been able to rebuild this system. And I put a lot of that down to Chopper. Chopper is an old school in-game leader, even though he's not that old. He is an aggressive in-game leader. He is assertive. Sometimes he'll just lead the charge and run out and smash out. And the only thing I feel that's a negative for him here is they're probably an easier team to counter. They have played so many games. They're not in the ESL partner teams. They're not a blast team. They are just fighting in every game non-stop. They lose some games, I think, how the hell did you lose that? And then they win some games where I go, woo, okay, now it's time to believe. Now, if you guys remember Patsy, I was so hyped about him early on in this team. And it's not that, like, he has progressed badly, but things have changed within the team. Positions have changed. He's not a liability, but he can be a difference maker. If we see him hit the heights of back at the PGR Major Antwerp, right, and other events, then you can say, yeah, there's a great chance there. But it is in some of these other closer online events that it's not been so great. What that has done is give us Magix. Now, Magix was told to me years ago that he was going to be the next best thing, potentially on like a NAVI or an Outsiders later on. Well, guess what? Magix is just doing it on Spirit, and he's been there for so long. But his stats, oh my God, if you compare it to the Patsy one I showed you, Magix has been undeniable. Beast on the server, sick in English, anime enjoyer. These numbers, Magix has been in form. Magix has been looking good. And he also doesn't hold back in his interviews. He's a great person to talk to as well. Now, the shining star though, because I've already touched on Patsy, of Chopper. I've already touched on the fact that what Magic's been doing is great. My shining star is wonderful. The 17-year-old Orpa from Ukraine has just been chilling. And when I say chilling, it's not in a bad way. He's just very cool and calm. When you see him on the server, he's not overhyped. And he just needs that little bit more. He doesn't have a bad event. Look at these numbers. Look at these stats. Wonderful, looks good, and performs well. He gets me hyped. But he doesn't have these like insane super over carry games, and it's not really needed. But if he can go the extra level, and you put him alongside the Magix and a Patsy up there, then Spirit can do some huge damage. They can be going further forward and drilling in and having a fantastic time here. So there's a lot of potential with this Spirit team, and they are one of the teams that I think that could go all the way. Astralis are our next mid-tier team. There's not as many low-tier teams within this group. I've got a lot in the middle. Astralis, they made it to the RMR. Now the pressure is on to get to the actual major. It's been a long time, but this is a legendary organization. But we now need to look at what this Astralis can do. Now, if you haven't been around for a long time, Device is back. This is beautiful. He is so good. Mr. Tom Cruise himself. Since he joined Astralis, just look at these numbers. Device is the one they needed. Blame F finally has backup, and I am so positive around this change. It's just some of the other pieces when it comes to these tougher events, these tier 1 events. That's the thing we need to look at really for the likes of Astralis. Now, Buzz, also, young player coming in. They didn't get someone from the academy team. They bring Buzz in and they say, look, now is your time to shine. They tried so many of their academy team from Astralis talent. But I will say that Buzz, he's not been bad. You can't knock him. He struggled in his first event, and then he's been there with a team and making sure it worked. They only dropped one game to LDLC during the RMRs. And right now, I don't see him as the problem. I see this as a good sign. I like what we're looking at when it comes to Buzz. And he comes from playing these pugs with Device. They knew each other anyway. Blame F's always going to do his thing. You don't even really need to touch him. The man's a monster. But he's finally not just doing everything on his own. And then there's a system in place. But it's Zipnix. Always coming in with questions around him. Now look at the event history. Go 2022. Wait a little bit, look at this and say, okay, not bad. They were, and I'm not looking at their very dominant era, right? I'm looking at more of the semi-recent times, the last few years. Then you look at 2021, and you say, okay, still pretty good. 2022, it was a really rough year for Astralis, to be fair. And now 2023, the game has changed a lot, right? And Zip is solid. Zip is so smart. He has this experience. And I'm never going to be saying for him to get cut. But could you be looking at a better option if these numbers don't start to improve? Now, we know he signed a really long contract with it. It's probably very unlikely they will change him, but we need to see that he's not a liability for the team. We need to see that he can still deliver in those high-pressure moments, and that's where something in an event like this, when it is very important, when it's the majors, the RMRs, the qualifiers, the events that they really want to be at, is where you want to see him actually get through. Now, they did struggle to make it through blast groups, but it was the first time we got to see Device back. I don't think they'll have a problem here at ESL, but it could be an early upset for him playing Spirit in the opening matchup. That is where it's going to be tough. Now, Shining Star. It's Device. I have a little fanboy moment. Device is the all-round great CS player. He can have these huge numbers without taking massive risk. He's not going to be a liability for the team. He has just been so consistent. Back on Astralis, he is dominant, and Blame F finally has backup. Now, Blame F, big Blame F, is still dominant. But Device is like the perfect player to have around him, you know? This is exactly what they needed. Device, for me, all events of Astralis so far, hats off to him. Great playing. This is a player, though, who will be needed in these tougher games, who is going to be the one they need to rely on, and not just the Blame F magic in there. And I don't have any worries about him doing so. But whether Astralis go through, it can be so hit and miss. Zip and Glaive have got a lot of pressure on their shoulders, because the rest of them, I don't think are going to struggle so much. Now, our last mid-tier team is Forze. Close but no cigar for Forze over and over again. They are close but still so far away from being a team we can say, yeah, you're going to be challenging. Now, Jerry is a piece who's the IGL of Forze, who I wanted to see go to NAVI at one point, considering how good he can be. And for me, they're just a middle ground upset team, but they're also not a partner team or anything. They're playing in all these events. They don't benefit from so many of these systems. They've made it to EPL, and now it's their time to shine. They're age a team. They've got 3 players who are 24, 120, 118. They've got some young talent coming through. And that's why I want to start with here, because Forze, for me, you know these players. You know Crad. You know what Jerry's going to do. But it's these young players like Result. Super interesting, young player. He joined in February this year, and he just stands out as a future star. But it's whether Forze can hold on to him. It's whether they can use him correctly. I would say that showing this kind of level at EPL is going to be vital and not crumbling for sure. But I don't know where to put Forze right now. They lose so many random games. They play too much potentially. Another team you can easily research as well and look into. I'm kind of confused by it all, I would say. And they're map pool. They can play a lot of maps, but it's which maps they can play to a super high level. It's so many close games. So they need to come in with the right mentality. They are kind of a team that brings up these players, and they never quite make the next jump. We've spoke about Forze for so long, like, nearly? Nope. Nope, not nearly. And it doesn't quite happen. And that's why I feel these guys, we just have to wait and see what they can deliver, because on any given day, they can beat your Astralises, maybe an Ents, maybe even a Liquid, But it's too little. It's too less. We don't see it enough. And a shining star for this team. Ding! Shalfie. Wow. Just look at his numbers. This guy, Shalfie, has been so good. In every game, you can rely on him. Now you've got the young blood of Resort, who I touched on earlier, that can be really great alongside him. Then you've got Crad, who's got more of the experience for sure. I think Forze have a good chance, but I don't consider them to be a team that's going to have a chance of going through. I feel like they have a chance of doing an upset here, trying to get themselves a game in. If they can get that first game over NAVI somehow, that's going to be huge and boost them with confidence to potentially cruise on forward. But I personally think they're just going to get 2-0'd. I think it might be close on some of the games. They maybe get some 16-14, 16-12 style. But for Forze, you got to show me a bit more than what you've showed in anything else you've done over the last year. Let's see how it works for them. Now we're coming on to our low tier teams, the ones who are bottom of the barrel. I'm going to start with ATK. Now this is a weird one. You have a North Macedonian, American, South African, a Swede, and a Canadian. And they walk into a bar, they decide to play CS. I don't know how this works. They even just come over to Europe before EPL and been playing a bunch of events. And it looks terrible. They've had losses, but I admire this. They are trying. They're trying to go out from playing in NA, and they're trying to show us that, like, we can fight and we can learn from this. The good thing is they've lost so hard. Like, look at these results. It's pain. It's just pain. It's awful if you're an ATK fan, but you can learn from this. You get punched up so many times. You learn to bounce back. You learn to adapt. Did they come over early enough? Did they have a chance of doing it? There's some really interesting opportunities here for ATK, because if they did learn a lot and they've been able to keep this grind going, they've got a great chance at EPL. But they should be the team that's just kind of farmed, and their first game is against Ents. Now, depending on, even if Nerds plays badly and it's the first game for Nerds on a tier 1 level, this is against ATK still. He's used to farming teams like this. I do want to touch on Swisher though, the North American in the team, and he's positive within North America, but no one in Europe has been positive in terms of their score lines and what they've been able to do. And that's the problem. Realistically, I don't see them winning a game. If they do, like, say the matches go as I expected, they should play Rare Atom, then they could win over the Chinese. But the Chinese themselves, just the fact they've been together so long, and we'll come on to them as well, just could roll over them, could dominate. So we'll have to see. But their shining star, is the player from North Macedonia. And it's added more European style to the team. Stats do not look good because actually he was the highest rated player in a lot of these games, but his stats won't look good when you're just being smashed on so hard. So despite the red you see, it's maybe not the end of the world. He is a player who has potential. He is a player that they obviously saw something in, and now he needs to show it. But this is going to be a tough test. And like I said, maybe just winning a game here is all they've got to hope for. But ATK boys, good luck. That's all I can say. And finally, the last low tier team, Rare Atom. They're coming all the way from China, and this is actually the first time they've come over to Europe since July 2022. They missed out on Rio. Okay, Rio's not Europe, but it's against the best teams, you know, if you're thinking along that side. And this is some of the old Vici roster that came into Rare Atom. They're the best team in China right now. They've overthrown Tai Lu, who we used to regularly see. We used to see the only team coming out in there. Now, one thing you guys should note, the stats are hugely inflated on all of these players because they're mainly just playing within their region. So take it with a pinch of salt when we're looking at stats. Now, Advent, he's got the experience. He's been over to Europe multiple times. He has been leading this team, and that is the one I need to look at to really help them in these opening games and games like this, you know, because for Rare Atom, you're going up against Liquid first. It's probably not going to be an easy game at all. You are coming into a situation where many of these players look individually great, but how do you deal with the tactical depth? How do you deal with the decision making? Jam Young, he's actually a player I remember covering in the RMRs. He's been around the block. He's been on the team from the Vici days until now, and he looks good. But again, where do we go the next step up? Now, the event I said when they didn't get to Rio, right, is that was a huge problem. It was Greyhound and IHC went through. Now there's more spots for this region. They've already made it to the Blast RMR, so they'll be here when we get to see what they can do in Paris. The last trip to EU was the one in Valencia. They beat the Brazilian teams. They lost to Outsiders 2-0. Not ideal for them. Insanely tough first game versus Liquid. So I'm like, oh, poor guys again. But one player I need to touch on as well, and it is my shining star for this team, is Kaze. Kaze, this guy, he's been trying so hard over and over again for his players, for his team. He is the AWPer of the team. He is a player that I love. He's coming out of Malaysia as well, speaking on the Chinese roster. And you know, the one thing I will say when it comes to Kaze is look at his stats. Really solid. From EPL Conference all the way to now, it's been dominant. But he is a player who is already played for a long time and still consistently bangs on the door to be there and say I'm a force to be reckoned with. This is a player, when you look at him and Advent, to be the experienced ones going forward and trying, and these young guns coming and just play the game the best way they can and learn as fast as they can. Now, I'm not sure if they had a boot camp. I don't sadly have any contact with any of these guys. I tried to reach out, didn't work out in my favor this time. But you know what? I think at least they should win a game over 80k potentially. We'll have to wait and see. That's my tier list. That's my preview done. Now, the group predictions that you guys know and love, and how you think I believe it's going to go. Now, as I said, 10 out of 12 predictions right so far for who's made it to playoffs. Can I now get 4 right? Can I see the light? We'll have to wait and see. So, NAVI, I think, going forward first, potentially second, depending on Liquid. Liquid, second, potentially first if they can beat NAVI. Then I'm going to put ENCE through. Now, that's my risky one to a degree, because I'm like, yes, ENCE. I believe they can do it, you know. And the thing is, with ENCE, I just believe in this system. And yes, Nertz is coming in, first tier 1 event, all the things we spoke about. But I see that as a great opportunity to grow in an EPL groups like this. This is going to be a fantastic starting point for him ahead of the bigger events coming up. Now, for my 4th team, I'm looking in my mind as like Astralis, Spirit, Astralis, Spirit, and they play each other. My mind and heart is saying, yes, Astralis, you should be going through, my 4th team. But I feel like Spirit have such a great chance here, because the liabilities in Zip and Glaive are too strong on the Astralis side compared to the liabilities I see on Spirit, which I don't see too many in comparison. I feel for Spirit is they've got a lot of positives around them, apart from they're playing so much. That means the anti-stratting could be really good for the Astralis camp. But obviously, you know, we've got everyone's favorite Hunden in there. He's obviously the analyst in the background, but I'm pretty sure he's just doing all the coaching at this point. Like he's the main one they're looking at. But Device can be the one that just breaks it all. And then, you know, Blame F's never going to struggle, really. He's going to do his thing. It's Buzz who might be a bit shaky. So, honestly, I'm just going to throw it out there and say Astralis will do it. So that's my 4. NAVI, Liquid, ENCE, and Astralis. But, poof, punch out Astralis, and maybe Spirit have a chance. Remember, I did this before, but I said it would be OG that could fuck it up. Well, Astralis, this should be yours, but you could definitely fuck it up. And Spirit, they have a great chance. As always, guys, if you've been enjoying my content, though, do make sure you click that subscribe button, drop a like, and if you want to comment anything, you've got any thoughts or feedback on the video, reply down below. I'm replying to all the comments. You can even ask some questions if you want, guys, whatever you want to see. It's so weird doing this video and doing everything back from Kiev, but I'm packing things up. I need to move on with my life because obviously it's not flights running from here. It's not safe. Hopefully streams and stuff will be back as well. But thank you so much for all the support. Thank you for the love as well. Make sure if you want to check out GG Bet, use code BANKS. If you're over 18, bet responsibly. Here we go, some of my predictions of what you think it's going to be. And let me just give you a quick teaser as well. So I'm just going to give you my predictions for the opening matchups on every single one. So NAVI over Forze should be a 2-0. Forze have a chance maybe to take a map. Spirit, I do think will beat Astralis in the opening game, and that could be obviously the change of my prediction. The odds heavily favor Astralis right now, though, so that could be a 1 for you. Liquid should just dominate Rare Atom, and then ATK versus Ents. I think it's Ents that's going to walk away with it, but there is a chance we see at least a glimmer of hope if there's been not a win, but a map will be taken for ATK, depending on how Nerds settles in. So I hope you guys have enjoyed another preview and prediction video. Thank you so much for all the love and support. You guys are amazing. I love my job. I love what I do. And I'll see you on the next video. We'll do a playoffs preview coming up as soon as this group finishes.